The enigmatic architect of the CIA, 10 scandalous and shocking facts about Frank Wisner. Frank Gardner Wisner was a key figure in the early years of the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, masterminding covert operations that shaped the course of the Cold War. However, his life was as controversial as it was impactful. From his youth to his tragic demise, Wisner's story is filled with intrigue, scandal, and shadowy dealings that defined his career and legacy. Here are 10 of the most shocking and scandalous facts about Frank Wisner. Number 1. A privileged childhood and tragic family life. Frank Gardner Wisner was born on June 23, 1909, in Laurel, Mississippi, into an affluent and influential Southern family. His father, Frank Wisner Sr., was a successful landowner and businessman, ensuring that young Frank grew up with financial security and opportunities for advancement. Wisner attended Woodbury Forest School, an elite preparatory academy, before enrolling at the University of Virginia, where he earned a law degree. Known for his sharp intellect and charm, he quickly became a standout figure among his peers. In 1940, Wisner married Mary Polly Wilkins, a socialite from a similarly prestigious background. The couple had 4 children: Frank Jr., Graham, Elizabeth, and Polly. However, Wisner's demanding and secretive career with the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, and later the CIA strained the marriage. Polly struggled with his frequent absences and the emotional burden of his clandestine work. Wisner's mental health began to deteriorate in the 1950s, culminating in his suicide on October 29, 1965, after years of battling depression and manic depressive disorder. His death left a lasting impact on his family and colleagues, underscoring the toll of a life lived in secrecy. Number 2. The mastermind behind Operation Mockingbird. In the late 1940s, Frank Wisner became the mastermind behind Operation Mockingbird, a CIA program designed to influence media narratives during the Cold War. As the head of the agency's Covert Action Wing, the Office of Policy Coordination, OPC, Wisner recruited journalists from major outlets, including the New York Times, Time magazine, and the Washington Post, to disseminate pro-American propaganda and counter Soviet influence. Through covert funding and strategic partnerships, Wisner ensured that the CIA's narratives reached global audiences, often presented as independent reporting. According to former CIA operative Cord Meyer, Wisner had the media eating out of his hand. This extensive network of journalists was jokingly referred to as Wisner's Wurlitzer, a metaphor for the way he orchestrated media messaging. While effective in promoting U.S. interests, Operation Mockingbird raised profound ethical questions. Revelations of the program in the 1970s, particularly through the Church Committee investigations, eroded trust in both the CIA and the press. Critics like Senator Frank Church called it a manipulation of the Fourth Estate that undermined democracy. Number 3. A dark role in the overthrow of democracies. Wisner played a pivotal role in 2 of the CIA's most infamous covert operations to overthrow democratically elected governments: Operation Ajax in Iran, 1953, and the coup in Guatemala, 1954. In Iran, Wisner and his team worked with British intelligence to remove Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, whose nationalization of the oil industry threatened Western interests. The operation reinstated Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, ensuring U.S. and British control over Iranian oil but also sowing the seeds of the 1979 Iranian Revolution. In Guatemala, Wisner orchestrated the overthrow of President Jacobo Arbenz, who had pursued land reforms that angered the US-based United Fruit Company. The CIA-backed coup led to decades of political instability and violent civil war. Dubbed the architect of regime change, Wisner's actions prioritized U.S. geopolitical and corporate interests over democratic principles. These operations, though celebrated at the time as Cold War victories, are now widely criticized for their long-term consequences. Number 4. The psychological toll of covert operations. By the mid-1950s, the immense pressure of Wisner's career began to take a severe toll on his mental health. He suffered a nervous breakdown in 1958, reportedly triggered by the CIA's inability to prevent Soviet advances and his personal guilt over the consequences of covert operations. Diagnosed with manic depressive disorder, Wisner alternated between periods of intense energy and deep despair. colleagues noted his erratic behavior and growing paranoia. Allen Dulles, then director of the CIA, relieved Wisner of his duties, assigning him to less demanding roles. A colleague recalled, "Frank was brilliant, but the burden of his work was unbearable. He carried the weight of the Cold War on his shoulders." Wisner's struggles highlight the psychological cost of a life spent in secrecy and the knowledge of the human suffering caused by his operations. His suicide in 1965 marked a tragic end to a career that had once epitomized Cold War heroism. Number 5. The mysterious Wisner's Wurlitzer. Wisner famously likened his media network to a Wurlitzer, a jukebox that could play any tune at his command. This metaphor captured the power he wielded over global narratives. Through Operation Mockingbird, he cultivated relationships with more than 400 journalists, including influential figures like Philip Graham of The Washington Post. The Wurlitzer enabled the CIA to shape public opinion on issues ranging from Soviet expansion to U.S. foreign policy. For example, Wisner's network amplified anti-communist sentiments during the Korean War and downplayed criticisms of U.S.-backed coups. While the Wurlitzer was effective, it fueled public paranoia about propaganda and the extent of CIA influence. Congressional investigations in the 1970s exposed the scope of the program, prompting reforms to limit the CIA's domestic activities. However, the term remains a chilling reminder of the blurred line between journalism and covert operations. Number 6. Tensions with the Eisenhower administration. Wisner's aggressive approach to combating Soviet influence often put him at odds with policymakers. During the 1956 Hungarian Revolution, he urged the Eisenhower administration to provide direct support to anti-Soviet rebels. When the administration chose not to intervene, fearing escalation into nuclear war, Wisner was reportedly devastated. He called the decision a betrayal of our principles and a missed opportunity to weaken the Soviet Union. These ideological clashes reflected a broader tension within U.S. foreign policy, the balance between bold covert action and cautious diplomacy. Wisner's frustration with the administration highlighted his belief in the transformative power of CIA operations, even as others warned of the risks. Number 7. Accusations of extralegal activities. Frank Wisner's name became synonymous with the murky world of Cold War covert operations, often blurring the line between legitimate espionage and unlawful actions. Critics accused Wisner and his Office of Policy Coordination, OPC, of employing unethical methods, including bribery, psychological warfare, and even political assassinations. One of the most controversial allegations concerned CIA support for regimes that suppressed political dissent through violent means. In Guatemala, Wisner's orchestration of the 1954 coup allegedly involved bribing officials and planting false narratives about President Jacobo Arbenz. In Europe, rumors swirled that Wisner's networks had funded anti-communist factions through dubious financial channels. Although concrete evidence for some of these accusations remains elusive, declassified documents and witness accounts suggest Wisner's teams operated with minimal oversight. Wisner's motto was results over rules, a former colleague remarked. While his defenders argue these tactics were necessary during the Cold War, detractors point to the long-term damage such actions inflicted on U.S. credibility and moral standing. Number 8. The untimely end of a troubled genius. Frank Wisner's life ended tragically on October 29, 1965, when he took his own life at his farm in Talbot County, Maryland. After years of battling manic depressive disorder, the weight of his clandestine career and personal struggles proved too much to bear. Reports indicate that Wisner had been deeply troubled since his 1958 nervous breakdown, a condition exacerbated by his removal from frontline CIA operations and the loss of his influential role. His death by shotgun shocked many but was not entirely unexpected by those close to him. He was a man of immense brilliance but carried too many burdens, recalled a CIA colleague. Wisner's funeral was attended by numerous intelligence officials and dignitaries, who mourned the loss of one of the Cold War's most enigmatic figures. His suicide underscored the immense psychological toll that Cold War espionage exacted on its operatives. Number 9. The secrets left behind. After Wisner's death, numerous classified files related to his operations remained sealed, fueling speculation about what other secrets he might have taken to his grave. Some historians believe these documents could reveal new insights into his role in some of the CIA's most controversial missions. Number 10. A polarizing legacy. Frank Wisner's legacy remains deeply polarizing. To some, he was a brilliant strategist who safeguarded American interests during a perilous time. To others, he was a ruthless operator whose actions undermined democratic principles. As historian Christopher Andrew put it, Wisner embodied the moral ambiguities of Cold War espionage, a hero to some and a villain to others.